everyone. Welcome once more to this new episode of the podcast. Here we have Betty Wadango, who's coming to tell us her magnificent experience with her near-death experience. Welcome, Betty, and thank you for coming to my podcast. I'm so grateful for
Thanks
this.
so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for creating conscious space for spiritual experiencers. I think that it's such an important part of our collective transformation. So I'm going to share my spiritual experience with you. I had a near-death-like experience in March of 2019, where I was transported to the space of eternity, the same space that near-death experiencers describe. In order for me to really share about the experience, I got to paint a little bit of a background for you to talk about the transformation in my own life. But I grew up in a lot of darkness and depravity. I grew up in a really chaotic environment. I was very impoverished growing up. My whole family are, they suffer from the disease of addiction. And it was just a very traumatic childhood, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. And so I started using illicit substances at a really young age so that I could cope with what my experience was like. And, I realized that if I took something, if I took a pill or if I smoked something or if I drank something, that my mood could change. And so I just always wanted to not be inside myself. My life was so dense with experience that I couldn't stand being me. And my dis-ease of addiction progressed over the course of my life. My parents were also both addicts, and their dis-ease of addiction really progressed over the course of their lives as well. And I kept watching them hit emotional, spiritual, physical bottom after bottom after bottom. And they just kept going back to their constant, which was their addiction. And in 2007, my parents made this decision that they were finally, enough was enough. They were sick and tired of being sick and tired. They decided to stop using drugs. And the only way that they knew to do that was to die. And so in 2007, my parents committed suicide together, which is a very large sentence to say. It's a very big experience to have lived. I was 23 when that happened, and my sister was 18. We found them, and it was... yeah, there's just no words to describe something like that. But I will say that in the moment of my parents dying, my addiction became my parent. It was like this instant shift. Like one set of parents was gone and the next parent stepped in. And my addiction was very loud. And it said, I'll never leave you. I'll never abandon you the way that they did. It's you and me together forever. And so that was my life. I was a militant atheist because there was no space for God in my life because drugs were my God. And so they became my guiding star. They came before every relationship, every family relationship. I abandoned my sister. I moved across the country. Every job, nothing mattered. Every pet, nothing was more important than my addiction, my relationship with my addiction. That was the most important thing in my life. And so, my addiction, it was my everything. And it ended up killing me. And I ended up overdosing. And that's when I had this spiritual experience, was through a drug overdose. And so I'm going to take you through the experience. The first part of my experience was what I imagined to be a life review. And I realized that I had taken too much of all of the drugs that I had taken. And so I thought that I had died. I mean, maybe I did. I don't know. There's nobody to say whether I was actually dead or alive because I was just alone on my bathroom floor. But I started to feel this rush of energy going up and down my body. And today I have some language for it. And what I was experiencing was a Kundalini awakening. And Kundalini roughly translates into life force. So I was having this life force energy awakening. All of my chakra systems were becoming online and activated all at the exact same moment. And I had never heard of a chakra before. I didn't even know what that word was. But as my third eye and my crown opened, it felt like my spirit shot out of my body and started to travel into the space of eternity. And the first part of that journey was this life review, where I was not only experiencing the feelings that I had experienced in life, but I was also experiencing other people's feelings. So, I'm not just a traumatized person. I'm not just a person who experienced a lot of trauma in life. I'm a traumatized person who traumatized other people. That's how the only place that I felt like I could get any kind of power, because I felt so powerless in my life. And so I caused mountains and mountains of real tangible harm to other people. And in my life review, I was beginning to experience that. I was beginning to experience the abuse that I had inflicted upon others. And then a couple of other things in my this life review were really predominant. One of them was that I experienced my parents' suicide, not only from my perspective as a grieving daughter, but also from their perspective. And it was like the pain is indescribable. It felt like what I imagine people to describe hell to feel like. It felt like I was drowning in this ocean of anguish and despair, and I couldn't breathe. And it was so overwhelming. And then I also experienced the death of children. So I found myself in the awareness of every woman in my life who had ever lost a child. So my cousin died when I was a teenager from a drug overdose, and I felt that loss as her mother. So as my aunt. And there are really, truly no words to describe what that kind of anguish is like. So I was feeling all of these super dark experiences because my life had been really dark. And I felt like I was just like, I would never be able to escape it. And I thought, okay, I died. I'm in hell. This is it. This is what happens. And then I started hearing these voices, these masculine voices, and they just kept repeating over and over again, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And so I started to follow those voices. And the first voice that I heard was my own divine masculine energy coming to greet me. And it was, I don't know how I knew that it was a version of me, but I knew that it was a version of me. And then it started to morph into men in my life that I could remember from my human life. So my father was there to greet me. A boyfriend that I had recently passed away. He was there as well. And they just kept affirming to me, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. And so I followed their voices. I landed in the light. And the way that it looked to me was the first place where I landed in my mind's eye was it looked a lot like a spaceship. And I landed on the deck of it. And there was thousands of other souls around me. And there was this commander in the center. And you can call that commander Christ or Krishna, Buddha, some sort of higher consciousness was in the center. And they were gearing us up for our jump to Earth. And so this whole army of spiritual soldiers are surrounding me, and we're all really excited, and we're going down to Earth on a mission. And the commander is telling us about the Great Awakening and a shift in consciousness, and we're all here for it. And we've signed up, and we're the bravest spiritual warriors that have ever existed. And everybody's so excited. And then my perception moves to another scene, and I'm standing in front of a table of beings. And they have this big, giant gold book, and they're thumbing through the book, and they're saying, okay, it's good to see you. You're not meant to stay. You're only here for a moment to gather some information, and then you'll be on your way back. And I'm looking around me, and I'm looking over my shoulders, and I'm like, you guys aren't talking to me, are you? Because I don't know where I am, but I'm definitely not going back to where I just was, because this place feels a lot better. And they just continue to thumb through the book, and they're like, no, 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 you still have much to do, much to do. You're not here to stay. And then it started to come to me that I was home. And I didn't know who these beings were that were talking to me, but I didn't have to, because I knew that they were people in charge of my mission. And I just kept pleading with them. And I said, you guys don't tell us what Earth is actually like. And I cannot handle going back there, and I will not go back there. And I saw myself transform into this small child, and I was banging my hands and my feet on the ground. You cannot make me go back. I will not go back. And they just kept telling me, this isn't a punishment. This is something that you signed up for. You don't remember. And so they said, we'll take you through the details of your pre-birth plan. That's what you're here for. So the way that it looked in my mind's eye was a lot like a video game. And that could be because of the generation that I'm born in, or because we're living in a simulation. You can take your pick. So the way that it appeared in my mind's eye was that I was in a grocery store and I had this big empty grocery cart, and lining the walls of the grocery store aisles were these gigantic cereal boxes. And every cereal box had a life experience on it. And because I was charged with coming down for the mission of the Great Awakening, I was going to have to pick life experiences that were very dense to transmute a lot of negative energy. And not only that, but there was life experiences that were predestined because of the family line that I was being born into. So I start grabbing all the boxes that I need: childhood sexual trauma, addiction, prostitution, degradation, homelessness, poverty. And then there's things in the cart that I haven't gotten to yet in my life, like recovery and overcoming and spiritual awakening and becoming a speaker and being an author and all these beautiful, quote unquote, positive life experiences. But none of those had happened in my life yet. So they didn't resonate, but I noticed them there in the cart. So, every time that I picked a life experience off of the wall, a little orb of light would come out with the box, and we would go orb to orb with each other and come into contract. So the one that sticks out very vividly in my mind is the fact that when I picked the experience of childhood sexual trauma, the orb of light that came out behind it, the man who molested me as a small child, we came into contract with one another. And I saw the reasons why. And one of the main reasons was that I had been his abuser in this same capacity in a previous life. And so we were balancing our karma with each other. And then again, like I shared, some of the other reasons was that I was taking on this particular kind of trauma, not just for myself, but for the collective in general. So as I heal my own wounds around childhood sexual trauma, I do that for the collective itself as well. So, in this moment of being downloaded with this knowing of the pre-birth plan, for me, it's a knowing, but other people can adopt it as a belief if it's something that resonates for them and they're not completely sure. So having this knowing that I had actually designed my life, that my soul had designed my life for me, it was like 2 tons of bondage had been released from my spirit. Things had no longer happened to me. They had actually happened for me, because on some soul level, I chose it for the evolvement of myself. And that was such a freeing experience for me, because I had felt like such a victim to my circumstance my whole life. And now I was being told that I wasn't a victim, that I was a divine co-creator. And that freedom was amazing. So I come back into my awareness, into the table of beings, and I was like so grateful and so thankful, and just expressing so much gratitude. Thank you for showing me this. This is the key. This is the piece of knowledge that I've needed my whole life to break me out of my mentality. I'm so happy to have it. I'm still not going back to Earth, but you guys are awesome for letting me know what's going on. I said, the show seems like it's going to be really great. I'm going to watch it from up here. I'm done doing my footwork down there. I'm going to grab my PJs and a bowl of popcorn, and I'm geared up for the show, for the Great Awakening. And they were like, listen, you're not being sent back as a punishment. You're being sent back because you signed up. You signed up and you're going back because you got to finish. And, I was still really super combative, and I just really did not want to come back. And I mean, I can't even explain to you what that space is like. It is home. I've never felt a feeling of home like that before. But so, I said, well, listen, I definitely can't go back into the body that I just came from, because she is messed up. I said, she's glitched. She needs way too much healing. There's no way to repair what's been done to her. And I said, so I definitely can't go back into her. And they said, okay, well, you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And so they showed me this baby, and she was beautiful. And I'm sure that she exists somewhere on Earth now. And they showed me everything about her ethnicity, her gender, where she would be born, her family line, her parents, her trauma, her opportunity to overcome, her purpose, everything about her. But she was going to have to take my life cart and finish it. And then because of the family line that she had been born into, she had some extra boxes added into her cart as well, some deeper levels of societal adversity. And so I thought, well, damn, if these are my only options, starting from zero, or going back into the body I just came from, I guess I'm going back into her. And so then I found myself kind of sifting back into my awareness, into my physical body. And I remember them very loud and clear saying to me, you know, like the second part of your life will not be nearly as challenging as the first. The first part of your life was boot camp, and the second part of your life will be carrying out your mission, and it will be much easier. You're going to have help. You're going to be living in spiritual awareness. You're going to have teachers and mentors and soulmates and kindred spirits and communities, and all of these things are going to find their way to you. Trust us. It's going to be much better. And I was like, I do not trust you guys. And then I found myself back in my body on my bathroom floor. And I just thought the whole thing was drug-induced psychosis. You know, all I knew was that I took a bunch of drugs and then I thought I was talking to the creator, you know, and it didn't fit into my picture. Like I said, I was a militant atheist. I didn't believe in anything bigger. This was just something like, you know, the craziest trip of my life. And I'll never be that messed up ever again. And then the universe started to shrink into this very small, narrow path so that I had no way to do anything other than get onto the spiritual journey. And so all of these divine synchronicities and, you know, miracles and coincidences, whatever you want to call them, they started to happen in my life. Like all of my drug dealers simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs, like people that didn't even know each other. It was crazy. And then, you know, I was in the midst of heroin withdrawal. I experienced the spontaneous healing. I mean, that alone let me know that like something much bigger is going on. You know, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the pain of opiate withdrawal. And if you have no experience, I'm happy for you. But it is just absolute agony. It feels like your bones are made of fire, like your skin is broken glass, hot and cold sweats, sick all over yourself from both ends. It's incredibly, incredibly painful. And the craziest thing about it is that there's actually nothing physically wrong with you. The wires in your brain are just so discombobulated and manipulated from the drugs that you actually think that you're in physical pain when there's nothing physically wrong with you. And so I had this moment of, it felt like a mental or a spiritual suicide, or maybe I did kill myself in some alternate reality, but I had this deep moment of absolutely understanding what had happened to my parents because I was in the same mental space. And I said, I'm going to have to kill myself to make this pain stop because this pain is unbearable and it's all that I could see. It's all that I could feel. And then I heard this voice and it told me to lay down and to count backwards from 10 and that I could begin to request what I wanted fixed. And, you know, I was in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, whatever you say, I'll bite. I want to no longer be physically dependent on heroin. I didn't say that I wanted to be rid of my drug addiction because I still definitely wanted to use other drugs. I wasn't trying to stop using drugs. I was just trying to not be in pain from this one drug that I was addicted to that has a physical dependency. And so then I saw these two little men appear in my mind's eye. And I still see them so vividly every time I tell the story. And they were wearing these white lab coats. They had these big bulbous noses. And they had these little lawnmowers that manifested in front of them. And I watched these men go through every crevice of my mind. And as they did, I felt these intense hot tingles start to take over my whole head. And I just knew that something magical was happening. And then there was this bright white flash and a feeling of somebody making X's across my forehead. And in that flash, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of opiate withdrawal. I mean, like moments before I was sick all over myself. And then there I was completely well and healed and fine. And it was so divine. And I threw myself on the ground and I'm screaming out to the creator, how could this be happening to me? I mean, like you could not have picked a more unworthy subject to bestow this kind of grace on. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in this. Why is this happening to me? And just for the contrast of my life, I was a militant atheist. I was a drug addict, a prostitute. I was on the verge of homelessness. I was a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I was a racist. I was a rapist. I had done mountains and mountains of harm to other people. I was not a good person. And here I was being bestowed with the unconditional love and grace of the divine. And if that's possible for me, it's possible for anybody. And for me, the biggest takeaway from that is that there is no such thing as condemnation. I could be the worst kind of person and still be loved by the infinite, regardless of what I've done in my life. And so after that experience, I thought that I thought that I was the next coming of Christ. I was like, I'm Jesus, everybody. I was crazy. I was running out on the New York City subway system. I was like, I'm the son of God. I can heal you. It was nuts. I feel so bad for every person I encountered. But once I started to integrate the experience and the dust started to settle, I realized that I had to do recovery and that I had a lot to learn, a lot to learn. A whole new universe had been opened up to me. And so through some divine signs and synchronicities that are so magical, I found myself in a long-term treatment facility, a long-term rehab in Brooklyn, New York, where I live. And that's where my integration journey started. And, while I was there, I had this insatiable thirst for knowledge. I wanted to read every spiritual text, everything I could get my hands on about metaphysics and the law of attraction. And I started to manifest my reality. And I didn't realize that my thoughts were shaping my reality. But I recognized that as I started to integrate my experience. My thoughts before were, I'm impoverished, I'm a prostitute, I'm a drug addict, I hate my life. And so every day that I was thinking that, every day that was my reality. And so then my thoughts started to shift. I'm a grateful person in recovery. I'm surrounded by spiritual community. Good things come my way. I have faith in something bigger than myself. And so then that became my outer reality. And, I found the spiritual texts that really helped me on my path. I'm a student and a teacher of A Course in Miracles. That's a metaphysical text channeled by Jesus. And it's a reprogramming, and it has helped me tremendously in my life in reprogramming my thought systems, because the ones that I had before were all sorts of backwards. I belong to a lot of different spiritual communities. I belong to 12-step fellowship. That's a highly spiritual program. I practice the 12 steps, which is also a reprogramming. Again, for me, I needed to change every thought pattern in my life because they were all so insanely out of whack and so misaligned. I study the Baha'i faith, and if you're unfamiliar with that, it's the world's youngest religion, and it believes in all manifestations of God. So Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, all the way till their prophet from the late 1800s, Baha'u'llah. And Baha'u'llah predicted that there'll be future prophets to come. So for me, those spiritual readings, they really resonate for me because it's about the oneness of humanity, the oneness of religion. It combines the conceptions of science and spirituality. And that seems most like my spiritual experience in eternity. And I also belong to a group for near-death experiencers and spiritual experiencers on the IANS platform with the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And that has given me so much freedom in my life as well, being able to connect with other spiritual experiencers. They gave me so much language for my experience. They helped me integrate and be comfortable being on earth, because for a long time I was trying to get back to that oneness experience. I wanted to get back to the light, to the feeling of God, to the feeling of eternity. And now I found in my life that it's not about getting back to heaven. It's actually about bringing heaven here. And I do that within my service work to my communities. I do that with what I do for a career now. I'm a coach. I help other people. And I get to feel that experience of heaven when I'm just around other people on the path. Like I've found joy in the human experience today. I never thought that would happen. Even after my spiritual experience, all I wanted to do was go back home. And now I know that this is my home, and I found the members of my soul family just by setting intention and just allowing the universe to surprise me in all these beautiful ways. And my life has truly transformed 180 degrees, and you don't need to die to experience transformation. There's so many amazing tools out there. For me, this was my path. This was the path that I had planned for myself. And yeah, I'm here for it. And the Great Awakening is well underway. And yeah, like it's really about going from ego-centeredness to spirit-centeredness, being service-centered. And so I make sure that I do that every day. And I'm really grateful to share this space with you today. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Betty, for that wonderful story. Wow, it's really impressive how all near-death experiences are quite different one from the other, and the things that you also encounter on that realm or space, it's completely, it is so diverse. And I always make the same question, because as it is diverse, this answer varies from person to person. And I just would like to know, when you were on that realm, how do you look like? How were you were saying that you felt this amazing peace and like this huge love, but how would you say that you look like first? And then you mentioned you were that you've found yourself into like a grocery store shopping, basically your experiences that you will come to live here on earth. And then you said that you didn't want it to go back to your former body, and that's why your spiritual guides gave you the option to start over again into someone else's body. So you would say that basically the soul is not really that we decide which life and which body we would like to occupy, and it could be maybe two or three souls that can decide to live, like for instance, a life that it was meant for someone else before, or how would you say that works?
So yeah, those are great questions. There's no physical sight in eternity. So we don't really look like anything, but in my mind's eye, what was coming up, number one, I saw myself as a light body when I was with my thousands of other souls that were getting ready to take this jump, this kind of quote unquote spiritual army that I'm a part of. So I saw us as in the shape of human bodies, but just as nothing but pure light, like no gender, no facial features. And then when I was in the grocery store, I saw myself as an orb, just a glowing little dot of light, along with other dots of light. And that was how we came into contract there. As far as like multiple souls inhabiting the same physical body, there's a concept that's out there in the collective about walk-in souls. So it could be that I've never really heard about three, but I'm sure that it could be, can make an agreement with each other, like, hey, you go for the first part of this person's life and I'll come in for the second part of its life. But when you get into a higher concept of it and you think about the oneness of spirit, like everybody's soul is actually connected to the source, which you can call God or the creator, whatever language works for you. So in reality, there are no separate souls that come into form. And like, even the fact that I see my soul as this individual personality soul that picked to come into this body. I think that when you get to a higher level of understanding, maybe you don't even recognize it as, like individual souls, and you just kind of see it as the one soul. But for me, in my human linear mind, it helps me to compartmentalize and see things as individual. So I definitely think that multiple souls can decide to experience one human life together. And that's what the concept of walk-ins is about.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting, right? Because when you're starting your spiritual journey, there are a lot of questions that comes to your mind, because simply there are some things that you cannot give any explanation with the concepts you have as a human being and with the experiences you've been living here. It's something that you really cannot explain if you don't experience that. Yeah, if you don't experience such a thing, right? So because we only have 8 minutes left and your experience has been so interesting, I still have a lot of questions, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who would like to reach you or get to you, even if they have the same experience. You also mentioned that you're doing some coaching. Are you open to this, that people can reach you and contact you?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I'm so interested in connecting and seeing whose spirit, like how we find each other, you know? So I'm definitely open to connecting. My handle on all social media is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. And you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And yeah, I also have a coaching business as well, where I assist people through shadow work mainly, transforming the trauma into triumph and really stepping onto your spiritual path and helping people, assisting them with figuring out how to manifest their reality to their highest potential. I know that if I can do it, literally anybody can. I mean, there's just no words. If you go on my social media, you'll see before and after pictures of me. It's unrecognizable, the person that I was before. So, I know that if transformation is possible for me, it's possible for all of us. In fact, I think it's inevitable for all of us. So, yeah, I'm very open to connecting.
Yeah, I've seen your social media, and that's what caught my attention. Like your story, it's very inspiring. It's also something that usually people who had near death experiences, or at least the people that I had interview, it's weird how most of them are non-believers initially, and then this experience transforms them. And this is like one of my last questions, and it comes in line with this last thing I said, is that are we able to break agreements that we packed before coming to Earth? Because if we are to learn something specifically, I believe that there's one more than one way of learning things. And is there a possibility that we can break these pacts, and like if we have to learn a lesson that doesn't necessarily have to be in a way that we agreed before, but because here we had expand our consciousness to a level that we can learn the same lesson from another place? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing is linear. Nothing is set in stone. The idea of pre-birth planning is not this super rigid prison. It's actually just that the major plot points have been picked out, and then you exercise your free will here on Earth to take loops and twists and U-turns, and you can go in between those plot points however you want. So for me, my addiction, recovery, spiritual awakening journey, it wasn't supposed to all collapse on top of itself like it did in the end. But because I kept missing the lesson over and over and over again, at one point, it was the end timeline. And it was like, this is your only option. So we have to make it all happen at once. But my soul's original plan was for me to enter recovery at a very young age, to have a slow and steady, gradual spiritual awakening, nice, slow, easy sort of lifestyle, to come into spiritual awareness. But instead, I kept taking my free will back. And so the universe had to throw a couple of spiritual bricks at my face and say, yo, girl, sit down. You don't know what you're doing. It's time to do something different. But I totally think that you can take twists and turns and loops, and it's not rigid. And you can even break contracts with people. And when you go back home, you might, come into communion with them and say, like, yo, what happened? I thought we were supposed to do this thing together. And they're like, oh, you know what? It wasn't working out that time. Let's go back again and we'll figure out some other way to play it out. So yeah, I mean, nothing is rigid.
Nothing is set in stone. Well, Betty, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for watching and listening to us. I will leave all your contact points in the description, so if anyone wants to reach you, they can contact you through your Instagram or your website. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the space.
Thank you all, and until the next time.